this is the second video dedicated to the Nina prophecies, and we are still covering events which are about to come, or at least some of them, during the pre-tribulation period, if we speak with Islamic and Bible language. By this point of time, nature has abandoned its usual ways to such an extent that it's possible that for some time there is no even central government in Russia. There was, by the way, a very similar prophecy exactly for America, where for, 2 years or something, there would be no central government. The natural disasters have made the central infrastructure almost obsolete, so basically everybody is fighting to survive at the place where God placed him at that time. And in Russia, she described it as there would be no volunteers to become a head of state, because the situation would be so desperate that the people around them would demand some sort of a policy or some sort of at least slightly feasible plan for a recovery. And it would be so desperate that nobody would dare to suggest such a plan, because it will obviously fail. The natural disasters are so severe, and then the people around will rip him off apart. But this will be a temporary situation, and the districts will still maintain some sort of local authority. Then she also saw how the subway, the tube in Moscow gets absolutely flooded suddenly. First of all, it smells very bad for a few days, and then the flood comes as a sudden flush and kills many people. There would be no subway after that anymore, and eventually entire Moscow will be, of course, destroyed completely by earthquakes and gaps opening. It would be ruined to such an extent that if somebody wanders in the remains that haven't fallen into the abyss, one wouldn't be able to even figure out which part of the capital was there once upon a time. She also saw the entire city of St. Petersburg being submerged in a flash as well. The weather around looked as if it is March or something like this, early spring, and she saw it happening again early in the morning around 4 o'clock. She also saw a massive explosion of the Black Sea. When the tectonic plates start dancing, they actually break these gas pipes which run at the sea bottom, and that causes this very polluted sea to form some sort of chemicals, and at the end the entire thing blows up. She saw that happening in an year with Olympic Games. There were some foreigners in Russia at that time. So as the snow caps, the glaciers of Earth eventually melt during this madness, the water will evaporate. It will not stay on Earth. But the main problem will be that this ice, it kind of binds the tectonic plates, and when it melts, then they will start dancing. And that's the word she uses, dancing. I can only compare it to Tandav Nritya, the dance of destruction of Shiva, who's got the habit to dance on the heads of those who think that they're wiser than the benevolent creator. And then terrible earthquakes will be regular, tsunamis, cracks will open in the earth, a lot of them, volcanoes like Vesuvius will wake up, droughts, floods, you name it. Gigantic fires will start devouring the forests all over the world. And then people will start realizing that after all, this entire industrialization was not that much of a smart idea. At that point of time, they will actually start hunting down the penguins for selling them absolute hypotheses as if they are a proven truth. It's all fantasy actually, but only then people will understand. Airplane travel will become very dangerous because these pockets of disturbed atmosphere, so to say, will be created, and when airplanes fly into those areas accidentally, they will spontaneously burst into flames. And that's how it will be initially. Eventually, many of them will start exploding shortly after taking off, because the atmospheric mantle will be wounded as well. So at that point of time, the average people will eventually figure out that the penguins don't even know basic things about anything at all. The toxic factories and plants around Lake Baikal, they will simply slip into the lake and poison it completely. And that would be a major loss because by then already the shortage of drinking water would be felt tangibly. Some major disasters she mentioned also around the city of Kazan. But despite everything, the crop failures will be much more severe in the Western Hemisphere, and there will be some political trickery, and they will manage to actually, with the cunning trade tricks, take away the food from the Asian people to feed their populations. Hurrah, hurrah, the government is helping the people. But that will even incur more wrath of God upon those involved in this trickery, because actually God decided to send first something relatively mild compared to what is coming later to the West, some relatively mild disaster as starvation, with the hope that it could probably serve as a wake-up call for many to realize that it is indeed the end times, and maybe it will be wise to turn my attention to the spirit. But instead of that, some people will gain more confidence in the government. You see, they're helping us. How they're helping you? By making other people starve. So we are getting nearer and nearer to the Third World War, but before that takes place, a few more things will be accomplished according to Nina. North and South Korea will start a war against each other using nuclear weapons. It will be all arranged by masterminds, the same group of people who financed both sides during the First and Second World War. America will come up with a great touristic project proposal for Europe, namely to build a mega bridge to the monasteries on Mount Athos in Greece, where still many genuine monks are finding shelter from the mad world. The tradition is alive. Currently, the access to it is very restricted. For example, women haven't been allowed to set their foot there since 1,000 years. Of course, that will be an island of sanity in the mad world, and they will decide to destroy it with ugly commercialism. And Nina said, if you see that happening, know that the war is sure and the war is very near. Then she said that a war which involves like an entire continent, that will first take place in Africa actually, and over there it will become very hot, it seems, because of the use of all kinds of crazy weapons. She mentioned that very vaguely and briefly, but the main impact from that for Russia, and I assume also the rest of Europe as well, there is something like this, there are hints about this, that it will become so hot in Africa that people will have to leave to remain alive, and the world will open their borders for them. But when they arrive at different locations, they will live in their own communities only, and it will turn into major disaster after that again. You will see. Sadly, there will be lots and lots of murders and crimes connected to this situation. She also says that there will be a spectacular planetary parade. She sees the people watching with great interest, and that will be like a major sign that the war is very, very near. Now, usually planetary parade means that the planets are aligned together, and they have a proper parade or partial parade, which takes place quite often. But sometimes the same term is also used in a broader sense for a very spectacular cosmic event. So she says that the people are fascinated by the spectacle, they really enjoy it and think it is very cool, but the voice of the Lord is telling her, sadly, that the human race is gonna do such stupid things, so amazingly stupid, that he even brought the spirits of the other worlds to watch. Have you sometimes seen that type of stupid people that you don't know if you feel like crying or laughing, and at the end you just let them drown in their own stupidity because they are hopeless? They wouldn't even accept the help of anybody because they don't understand that they need help to start with. So God will invite even the other worlds to watch the sad, suicidal circus on earth. Many souls will depart earth just before the big war starts. That's how their karmic path is designed. Besides the terrible epidemics, there will be these drastic fluctuations in the atmospheric temperature, and this will be a major cause for elderly people to depart. The priests and the funeral services will not manage the situation. Most of the sincere monks will depart during this time, since they learned their earthly lessons without the need of extreme situations and disasters reminding them to do so. They were wise to do it on their own. So, already before the big war, during the pre-tribulation time, they will place the antichrist, the Dajjal, as head of the European Union. That she mentioned a few times. But then once she made a fast remark, so was it EU or the UN? So such small variations in the scenario are also possible, not only because she recorded properly her visions years after they were shown to her. That's one reason, and the other one is that not everything is fixed in stone, and certainly EU and UN are very similar, so naturally there could be such small variations. But looking at the evidence from the other prophecies, which was in the episode about the Dajjal, it is definitely EU and not UN. So he will appear on the political scene before the Great War, but only after the war they will have this official coronation, which I'm sure they will call the event of the millennium. And that, according to the biblical timeline, is right on the turning point of the pre-tribulation, culminating into a great tribulation. However, still synchronizing all the timelines from the various prophecies remains difficult for me. Because in terms of time, Nina says that from the point of the resurrection of a saint called Seraphim. More about this to follow, or to be more precise, counted from the moment in which he departs after the resurrection until the descent of Christ, it will be 4 years. However, this resurrection is supposed to take place also before the Great War, and that shifts the world war into the very end of the pre-tribulation, like only half a year is left before the pre-tribulation ends. And this I'm having difficulty matching with the other prophecies, which leave the overall impression that the world war will be a couple of years. There could be many reasons for that. First of all, it's not really sure that Christ will appear like at the very end of the Great Tribulation. Maybe the Battle of Armageddon will be somewhat before that, so there will be more than half a year left from the pre-tribulation. Another reason is that maybe this coronation will not be exactly at the very middle of the entire 7 years of intense trial prophesied by the Bible. I mean, we've got translations of copies of translations of copies of translations. How difficult is to confuse amidst with exactly in the middle. It's very easy. And the all-knowing Great Spirit knew I would be struggling to reconcile all the timings of the prophecies together, and that's why he made sure there are specific instructions for that. And the instructions are: don't try to figure out the timings precisely. All you need to know is the events in some sort of approximate sequence, and that's enough. And the reason behind this is not only because there could be some sort of slight shuffling due to not everything being set in stone, and the other reason is that actually quite few prophecies say that time will run differently once the most intense period starts. And I really believe this. I've had experiences during shamanic ceremonies of time flowing much slower. I've never experienced faster flowing, but I've experienced much slower flowing, during which I could do things which would normally take me, let's say, an hour within the span of 5 or 10 minutes. And it actually happened a couple of times, and only subsequently, by pure chance, later on, I found out that has been going on. I wasn't aware when it happened the first few times initially, because there wasn't any notification, so to say, some sort of alarm during the transition points. It was absolutely seamless. So based on a very good number of prophecies, I do believe that most likely the entire 7 years period will feel like 2, 3, 4 years, something like this, actually the way we will feel it. And the nearer the end is, the faster the pace of time will be. Seraphim was a 19th century renowned and loved by everybody saint whose immortal remains are currently kept in the Divevo monastery. According to Nina, he will resurrect, he will come to life in front of everybody, and he will deliver the true teachings of Christ once again. This is what, according to her, is meant in the Bible by the true gospel will be preached all around the world just before the arrival of the antichrist. Of course, so many people will flock to the spot that it will be like a sea of people just everywhere around where he is and where he preaches. He will stay for some time. He will allow him even to be filmed on TV, and he will explain once again in great detail everything about the end times, everything about the antichrist, everything about the mark of the beast, so that nobody has any doubt left. That's why he would choose such a way to appear in a miraculous way, to prove to the world that indeed he is a divine messenger. As we saw in the previous episode, initially the borders of Russia will be completely closed, but then they will open them for a short while, and that's the time when he will appear. And even many foreigners will come to see the miracle and to hear from him. And after that, when the Dajjal comes and they employ him in the European Union or whatever, they will immediately recognize him and they will start alerting the people about the true identity of this man. And many of them will be killed because of that. Essentially, they will be in absolutely no way different from the ancient martyrs who preferred to change their body instead of living in a way in which they will be ashamed of their own choice. And just to remind you from a previous episode that an ancient martyr saw these modern martyrs and said that actually those souls will achieve even higher praise from God for what they did, because we fight the servants of the Dajjal, the antichrist, while in the end times these people will actually defeat the Dajjal himself. To defeat the Dajjal, according to the ancient saints, means not to participate in his initiatives and not to give in into his hypnosis. In some of the older videos, I believe a couple of years old, I give some examples, very interesting, from Asia, about saints who have died and their bodies are not fully dead. Some of them sweat, things like that. The Serbian Orthodox Church has also managed to preserve for hundreds of years the body of a saintly king. It also does not decay. So Nina gives lots of importance to this resurrection because the message will be heard all over the world. And at this point, if somebody has so much lost interest in understanding the mysteries of his own soul that he is not even impressed when a mummy comes back to life in front of everybody, well, for a person who has reached that stage of zombification, the path from then on would be quite difficult, and at the end, at the day of reckoning, for those who don't believe that it will happen as an earthly event, for sure it happens when people die anyway. So at the day of reckoning, there will be no excuse that I didn't know. At the time when the Dajjal is appointed as a political leader, they will also start removing the crosses from all churches. He will give that wise advice because, you see, the cross is a symbol of crucifixion, a ghastly scene. So we don't want negative things in our lives. Let's substitute it with the star. And that's why we have many of the older prophecies say, when you see that they change the symbol of the faith, the cross, with something else, then it's the time to stop going to church and practice your true faith at home. Now, as far as the very excuse for removing the crosses, that they celebrate a bloody event, I personally agree with that. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. Moreover, in the set books, it is described that it didn't really happen the way we determine what really happened or not in this three-dimensional world. It was simply a psychic idea which was demanded by that time by the mindset of the crowd to understand the message, to have some sort of development of the story which they expected. And there was a crucifixion, but some other person actually got crucified, and then because of the psychic event, the entire story got distorted. Anyhow, so again, as of my personal opinion, and I believe I saw few hints here and there, only hints I would say, in the prophecies, the cross as symbol of crucifixion will not be present, or surely will not be the major part of the future many people prefer to call it Christianity in the New Earth, although the Muslims call it Islam, but it's actually the very same thing. It's the original faith. It is possible, however, that the cross as a geometric figure remains as a main symbol because it was used as a sacred sign since antiquity, and I'm sure at that time it had a completely different meaning. Something else which Nina mentioned just in 2 words, that Seraphim Sarovsky will tell the true gospel and the true history, which has been seriously distorted, especially after the 16th century. I'm really curious, will it be the history as I revealed it in The Survivors? So in the next video I will continue to list the events as prophesied by Nina. And by the way, the original recording would be, I don't know, at least 6 or 7 hours. So what I'm making for you is in no way actually a translation, not even close. Probably a summary of the key points would be a better description. And also points on which I elaborated in previous videos or will elaborate in future videos. And they are also not included much in these at least three videos, which will be devoted entirely to her prophecies. Again, you can find the audio original in the description, and now I would like to make few footnotes, as they say in the books. Why did I call Gorbachev a traitor in the previous videos? Because that's how Nina and everybody else in Eastern Europe calls him. To be more precise, dirty traitor, that's his proper title. And people hate him because poverty spread through Eastern Europe after his mission was accomplished. First, the society was divided in classes. This practically did not exist before that. Probably, I'm sure there were a couple of people in the government, in every government, that were extremely rich, but these were isolated individuals. This was not a class. While now in Eastern Europe we have classes of poor and rich which are played against each other, and the rich and the middle class, they're a very, very thin percentage, not like in the West. They're maybe like 10 or 15% of the entire population. This is not exact, but certainly it is somewhere in that range. And not just statistics, I also sometimes still visit Eastern Europe. In general, the overall living conditions have deteriorated significantly since the fall of communism. A very good parallel with India, by the way, which was a very rich and prosperous region with almost no poverty before the arrival of the progressive bringers of civilization from the West. So what the people in India get is plenty of talk about progress and living conditions hundreds times worse than it was before the arrival. Another huge problem is the terrible increase of crime and corruption in Eastern Europe. Civil crime has multiplied thousands of times, not just hundreds, thousands, because it is practically encouraged by the new laws. And for these two reasons, if you ask the Eastern European people, they will quote these two reasons for which they call him a nasty traitor. But for me personally, the worst is the terrible decay of morals. And with this, everybody who is old enough to remember the old times, everybody just agrees about this point, 100% of the people. And it's not just a little bit, it's scary. So you say that you thought that Gorbachev helped USSR to escape poverty. No, not according to the people, nor according to the statistics, surely not. But that's because probably you live in the West and the media is simply lying to the people. They still do it because I also listen to Western media sometimes. Communism is still, the word is still used very much to scare the people, to create enmity, and they will play this card again during the Third World War. And that's a total, like, mental words of meaning trick that has little to do with the substance of things. If we really talk about socialism, that was achieved actually in the Scandinavian countries, and they're still running their system on those principles. That is, if we really talk about the social structure. But the media, this is just a scare keyword. That's what it has been turned to. So, to be more precise, the way Nina described it, the drunk mob who will be killing without trial, they will target first of all the peoples who did the crimes of the privatization. Because when the so-called perestroika started, the exit transition from communist order, they said, now we'll privatize everything, and whatever was taken away from the people, to make this everything belongs to everybody cooperation thing in the beginning of communism, will undo that. And they did return especially some lands to the original owners, that's true. But mostly the privatization was about handing as a gift the previously government-owned factories, plants, and all kinds of initiatives, giving them as a gift to people who are tried and tested criminals, people who are corrupt, people who will surely accept bribes, because they needed that type of people to be in charge, because previously, that's why they changed the order that was before that, because there was corruption for sure, but still, in overall, the people did own to a large extent the industries, the plants. Everything was functioning in such a way that the profit would eventually go to the people, at least most of it, the larger chunk. The parasites didn't like that situation, and that's why poverty came after that, because people lost their income. The riches were transferred to the hands of the chosen criminals. Eventually it was all into foreign trusts, etc., and eventually, as I pointed out in previous videos about Alexander Paramonov, everything is now concentrated in the hands of the war organizers as almost fully legitimately owned private businesses. So this privatization was the turning point for poverty, and this even children know in Eastern Europe. This is like undisputed. And these fat pigs, or their main servants on local soil, are well known to the people, and that's what the mob is going to kill, along with some journalists and scientists. So Ram from India asks a good question. We should always be angelic and shed off anger to reach higher dimensions. Yet on the other hand, if we do not resist, the evil will multiply beyond control and the situation will turn hopeless. Now the key point is not to confuse resistance with anger. Actually, only Rajasic resistance is the angry resistance. One can also resist sattvically, which will be most efficient, by the way. And also one can do a tamasic resistance, like most of the resistance nowadays. It mostly wastes people's time and energy and gives minimal or negative results. So certainly there are some very exceptional and extremely rare cases when the anger is really justified because of extreme sudden situation or attack, something of that sort. So let's say if you get angry once every 3 or 4 years for maximum 1 hour, then there is a chance that this could be justified anger. But if we are talking about a permanent mood or something happening regularly, then this is definitely not justified. Because then it is a trait of your own personality instead of something provoked by an external situation. Now, as far as the current earthly developments, the prophecies seem to be coming true, and most likely they will continue coming true. And also seeing how well the parasites play their cards, I can tell you for sure that they will leave no chances for some sort of, let's say, opposition by force to do something in terms of demonstrations or revolutions. There will be no such chance. There will be no chance of organizing anything because people won't be able to move free, and the communication will be also censored. Currently on Earth, about the main problem, any Rajas-style anger-fueled resistance can happen only on personal scale, maybe some rare exceptions somewhere, but as far as providing overall solution, that is out of question from what we see and from what we read in the prophecies. So then we are left only with two choices: tamasic resistance or sattvic resistance. So since most people have too much tamas in them nowadays, obviously most of the resistance by far will be tamasic. And then whoever on personal level does sattvic resistance for their own soul, that's the best, and that's what I hope I will help people do with this series about the end times. And the parasites, they know that there will be some slight losses, but in overall they will also get whatever they want because they will get the masses. You know, when you harvest wheat, now and then here few seeds drop off, but this is not regarded as any significant loss. No, in general, the farmer would say, I have a good harvest. The couple of seeds who fell off were natural, negligible, and expected loss. Few seeds fell on the side of the field, and that's negligible, and in the same way, those rare souls who will go for sattvic resistance, well, they will be a negligible loss for the parasites, and they will let them go. They will have to let them go also by the law of the universe as well. The old prophecies very often talk about false prophets, and at first it may sound like some sort of archaic expression, but just look at this. I think the false prophet title will be most appropriate even in modern English. We're at grim crossroads. One path leads to utter despair, the other to total extinction. This man is so sick. But looking at his titles, people will take him seriously and absorb the poison from his words. What he's actually doing, he's proposing two tamasic paths, one of total destruction and the other one of total despair, both pure 100% tamas. And sure enough, those who put their psyche in tamas, they will be facing extinction on personal level and total despair, both. Not only either, but both. To the extent one's personality is sattvic, one will have the corresponding capacity to figure out what is the right sattvic solution for each and every situation. When man's psyche is sattvic, his decisions in this life will be sattvic, and the destination after death will be also the beautiful sattvic heavens. Sadly, this most important ancient teaching is ignored, and there is hardly any interest in it. My video on it got very little views, because people prefer only simple methods, which do not require changing themselves, learning, and instead they will hope to enter the new age and get cured of their tamasic depression because of the lovely environment and easy life at that time. But this is not going to happen, because the beautiful world will be only for those who have already achieved the beauty inside. But most of the people will stubbornly resist the truth, and until the very end they will say, oh, these things with the scales and the entire judgment thing, it's all symbolic. And that's true. The costumes, the setup, and even the appearance of the characters will be symbolic. But this is not a reason to dismiss the truth behind it, which is that the beautiful earth at the end of everything will be a mere practical reflection of the purity and beauty of the noble souls who never bowed down to the pedophiles until the very end. And thus they passed the most difficult test since our unique world was created. So this is a user-submitted question about the apocalyptic prophecies being synchronized with the ideas of Seth. Is the apocalypse just a probable future that we can't avoid anymore? Seth doesn't say exactly in a straightforward manner that we can't avoid it. He just says that in some of the possible scenarios, most of the people will die. But keeping in mind his overall style of writing, for him to mention, even to mention briefly, something which we consider, most people at least, so negative that he avoids doing at any cost, that by itself, for me, definitely, it either means that it is one of the most probable future, or that it cannot be cancelled anymore. As far as the prophecies seem very deterministic and free will and choice having little or no role, I don't see such thing implied in the prophecies. Just on the opposite, every prophecy that is long enough to give a detail and clarification clearly says that there are plenty of options and many things are conditional. I think this is simply a mainstream media balloon to present the prophecies as preaching no free will and no choice. This is simply not true. Now, as far as Seth implying that nothing is determined and we have much control or influence, this is definitely his general message, but he's got quite a few books, and in them he also says that you have to read and understand them all. You won't do your work just with the general message, and if you read all the books, you will also find the chapters where Seth describes events which cannot be cancelled, and even sins for which there is no atonement, although I'm sure the word sin will not be mentioned in that sentence, but whatever equivalent he uses, it's the same thing. And then why does my humble self, the devout follower and admirer of Seth, say sin with such an emphasis when Seth avoids the word by any means? It's because such times have come, and so little people have understood and appreciated the absolutely polite and sattvic teachings of Seth, in which he avoids using the word sin not to traumatize people. Not many sattvic people around to appreciate that, and I'm using sin to a bit of shake even the people who have some rajas inside, so at least they don't do the sin out of fear for the reaction. Because sattvic people, they do not sin just because that's radically opposed to their very nature, that's against their very idea of what existence should be. But the Rajasic people, if there was no punishment, they wouldn't mind some sin. So I'm just trying to bring the message to that type of crowd as well. So what happened yesterday, I was browsing YouTube and I see prophecies by Otrok Pavel, and I casually thought, I didn't know about these prophecies, and I opened it and started listening, and it was about the current bug situation and everything around it, and listening at the detail of things. I was assuming the video is made just now, with the current developments, but when I saw the publishing date of the video, my hair stood on end. It was published in May 2019. This is also the second part for those who know Russian. So I will try to deliver those messages in English as well, although it's just so disgusting, that it will be difficult on my side, but still the accuracy is amazing. The main practical advice is from that over an hour of material is that by December 2020, where a few days pass, they say everybody who is determined to remain normal should have already moved to the countryside, because by the end of year 21 they will be stopping people on the street and on the roads for a forced fix. What will make you nauseous is the varieties of ways they will use to mark. Pavel already advises to just remove all TVs, sensor gadgets, and most importantly smartphones from home and from environment. The phones will be most dangerous. For now, Pavel said you can still use phone as long as it is not smart, but later on even those will have